So I'm sitting in the makeup chair the other day, thinking about the old days. And this memory just bubbled right up, clear as day. Remember the waiting room? At Fox? Back in '98? The one with the orange carpet that looked like it had seen every sin known to man? And that potted fern in the corner that was clearly just plastic? The one right outside where they auditioned for, well, for everything, it felt like.
Oh, I remember that room. More acutely, I recall the chill that seemed to emanate from the very walls, regardless of the thermostat, and the faint, cloying scent, not quite disinfectant, not quite air freshener. A chemical ambition, perhaps. It always struck me as an intentional disquiet, designed to unsettle before you ever stepped into the light.
Disquiet. That's a good word for it, Alfre. I always just called it the pit. You'd be sittin' there for an hour, sometimes two, listenin' to the director's assistant on the phone, chewin' her gum like a cow on cud, loudly announcin' how creative the new interns were. And then they'd call you in, look you up and down like you were a side of beef, not even making eye contact half the time, just flipping through your headshot with a heavy sigh, especially if you were coming in for, well, for one of those parts. The strong, weary woman of the land type. Like they needed to confirm your weariness by making you actually weary just waitin'.
Indeed. The ritual of it. To spend countless hours honing one's instrument, only to be reduced to a momentary assessment within a space so deliberately devoid of warmth or respect. It wasn't merely the indignity of the waiting. It was the subtle message that your worth was provisional, contingent on how quickly you could be categorized, placed in the proper narrative slot. I recall being offered a bottle of water once, but the label had peeled, and the water was lukewarm. A small thing, perhaps, but indicative of the overall disregard. It suggested that protagonists were served chilled, pristine hydration. Supporting players, not so much.
Well, preach, sister. You always could put a fine point on it. But look, Alfre, I brought you here to talk about the project, the one that got away. Ideally, we shoot this on 70 millimeters. You know, Alfre, after all these years of playing various shades of the woman who knows where the bodies are buried, or the one who'll fix your problem, no questions asked, you start to wonder. You start to wonder if there's a whole universe of stories they just haven't bothered to offer you. Or maybe haven't bothered to imagine you in. I mean, bless 'em. It's been a good run, don't get me wrong, and I appreciate a steady paycheck as much as the next dame. But there's a part of you, deep down, that just aches for something more. Something that says, she's not just the sturdy oak in the background, she's the entire damn forest, and maybe the soil, and possibly the fungi network connecting everything.
I understand that ache, Margo. Completely. We all do, don't we? That yearning for the uncharted territory within ourselves. The roles that demand you shed every skin you've ever worn.
Exactly. So one long, particularly frustrating winter, when the phone wasn't ringing for anything beyond tough grandmother with a secret past. Not that there's anything wrong with tough grandmothers, mind you. I just felt I'd exhausted the full range of tough. I started writing, and it just spilled out. Took on a life of its own. It's called The Infinite Mend.
The Infinite Mend. Intriguing.
Intriguing, indeed. And probably impossible to get funded, but that's neither here nor there. In my head, it's already got the budget of a small nation. We open on this. We open on an extreme close-up, a single dewdrop trembling on the edge of a perfectly formed, yet subtly bruised, deep purple petunia. Not a rose, mind you, too cliché. A petunia. Resilient, often overlooked, but vibrant as hell when you pay attention. We hold on that dewdrop, watching it reflect the blurry, inverted image of a bustling city street. The Panavision lens, of course, is breathing, giving it that lush, almost liquid depth. The soundscape is minimalist. A distant murmur of traffic, a lone violin note that seems to emanate from the very fabric of the air, not an instrument. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the camera pulls back. Not a quick zoom, no sir. A stately, measured retreat. We reveal the petunia is in a cracked ceramic pot on a fire escape. And then, we pull back further still, past the peeling paint of the railing, past the grimy bricks of a nameless apartment building, across a narrow alleyway choked with overflowing recycling bins, and there, in the window opposite, barely visible through the dust and grime, sits her. My character. Alara Vance.
Alara Vance.
Alara. She's perhaps in her late 50s, early 60s, hair pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense bun, a pair of practical reading glasses perched on her nose, a threadbare cardigan slung over her shoulders. She's hunched over a workbench, illuminated by a single, bare bulb, surrounded by, well, this is where it gets interesting. Not pottery, not knitting, not even bookkeeping. She's surrounded by what look like fragments of solidified light, whispers of color, impossibly delicate strands of what appears to be starlight, shards of something that hums with an internal glow. She's meticulously, painstakingly, mending something with what looks like an ancient jeweler's loop and a ridiculously fine needle made of pure thought. Her hands, surprisingly nimble despite their age, are moving with the precision of a cosmic surgeon. She's not just a woman, she's a weaver, a mender.
My goodness. So she's a craftswoman of some kind? But with starlight?
Precisely. But don't let the craftswoman part fool you. This isn't your aunt knitting mittens, Alfre. Alara Vance is the keeper of the forgotten threads of existence, the quiet architect of continuity. You see, the universe, as it turns out, is a rather fragile, constantly unraveling tapestry. Stars blink out, not just from age, but from tiny snags in the cosmic fabric. Memories fade, not just from time, but because the threads of emotional connection, of historical resonance, get frayed. Fundamental concepts, justice, beauty, the taste of a perfectly ripe peach, can actually unravel if no one is paying attention. And Alara? She's the one who pays attention. She's the cosmic janitor, the celestial seamstress. She collects these frayed pieces, a whisper of a forgotten language, the echo of a laugh from a timeline that almost didn't happen, the nascent spark of a star that's about to flicker out, and she mends them, quietly, secretly. From her dingy apartment above a dry cleaner in, let's say, a perpetually rainy, vaguely Eastern European city. Prague, maybe, or Krakow, somewhere ancient, with a lot of forgotten corners. The beauty of it, Alfre, is that no one knows. She is utterly, completely unremarkable to the rest of the world. She walks down the street, and people barely glance at her. She buys her bread, she takes her tea. She is the epitome of the samana, character actress, reliable, essential to the background, but never, ever the main event. And that, right there, is the delicious irony. Because without her, none of it exists. The ZD. Main events, the ZD. Leading men and women, the very concept of a dache. Story? It all depends on her quiet, relentless work.
Margo, darling, this is quite a concept. So she's the unsung hero on a universal scale, the ultimate, behind-the-scenes force.
Exactly. And that's what drew me to it. All those years being told I'm too specific for a lead, too grounded, not glamorous, enough, not conventionally sparkly. Well, Alara Vance isn't sparkly either. She's sturdy, she's essential, she's the glue. And her power isn't flashy. There are no explosions, no capes, no grand pronouncements. Her power is patience. Her power is discernment. Her power is the ability to see the micro-frailties in the macrocosmos. The narrative engine kicks in when there's an accelerating, unraveling. A core concept, say, the very idea of empathy, starts to fray dangerously, and Alara, for the first time, has to step out of her solitude. Not to fight, mind you, never to fight, but to subtly nudge, to create a series of small, seemingly unrelated terrestrial events that will, in their interconnectedness, mend that fundamental cosmic thread. She might, for instance, subtly alter a bus schedule in Buenos Aires to make two strangers meet, knowing that their brief, shared moment of connection will generate just enough empathetic resonance to prevent a galactic war. Or she might lose her wallet, forcing a disillusioned young artist to return it, sparking a tiny thread of human kindness that ripples outwards.
So it's not about grand gestures. It's about the quiet ripple effect. The butterfly flapping its wings, but on a cosmic scale, guided by you.
Precisely. And for me, playing her, it's about finally showing that quiet strength, that a face that has seen some years, hands that have worked hard, and a mind that's perhaps a little tired of the usual song and dance, can be the most potent force in the universe. It's not about being conventionally beautiful, it's about embodying an ancient, profound beauty that comes from purpose and resilience. It's not about being the star of the show, it's about being the quiet, foundational element without which there is no show. Think of the climax. Not a battle scene, oh no. The climax is Ilara, alone in her apartment, her glasses fogged, her face strained, working through the night, desperately trying to mend a particularly stubborn tear in the fabric of Ania, hope. The light fragments around her are dimming, threatening to go out entirely. Her hands are shaking, but her resolve is absolute, and in the final moments, she weaves the last thread, securing it with a single, exhausted, but ultimately triumphant sigh. And somewhere, across the universe, a tiny spark of light ignites in a child's eye. A feeling of possibility returns. No one knows why, but she does. It's a love letter to all the overlooked, to all the unsung, to all the sturdy, reliable people who keep the world, and perhaps the cosmos, from falling apart without ever asking for a shred of recognition. It's my ultimate character study, but the character happens to be the linchpin of all existence. And honestly, Alfre, who better to play someone essential but unseen than someone who's made a career out of being the essential but unseen character actress? It corrects the ledger, if you ask me. It says, "No, I wasn't just tough. I was the reason you had anything to be tough for."
Margo, that is a lot. But hear mine. Ideally, we shoot this on 70 millimeters. Margo, you know how I've talked about those stories that just ferment in your soul, the ones that demand to be told? Not just because they're good tales, but because they feel like an elemental truth begging for air? Well, for the last decade, I've been living with one of those. A film, really, that I wrote. A project so intensely personal, so woven into the very fabric of who I am, that it almost feels presumptuous to call it a vanity project. It's more a necessary utterance, a whisper amplified. The working title, the one that still resonates with the most profound truth for me, is The Stillness Between the Tides.
A soft chuckle, then a sound of intrigued contemplation. Oh, that's just beautiful, Alfre. Already I feel it.
Yes, it's meant to evoke that liminal space, that moment of suspension where past and future, land and sea, breath and memory all converge. And visually, Margo, it would be breathtaking. We open on a single, isolated shot, rendered in the breathtaking clarity of 70 millimeters Panavision, capturing a landscape that is both ancient and achingly present. It's not a sweeping vista, mind you, but a detail, intensely observed. A lone, gnarled cypress knee, half submerged in the brackish, almost oily water of a low-country estuary. Its surface is slick, reflecting the muted, pearlescent glow of a morning mist that clings to everything like a veil. A solitary heron stands sentinel on its peak, absolutely still, a sculpture carved from shadow and light. The quality of light is almost painterly, a chiaroscuro effect, soft yet deeply saturated, as if the very air holds secrets. There is no sound, save for the distant, rhythmic sigh of the tide, pulling back. It's an image of profound patience, of history holding its breath.
A slow exhale, almost reverent. My goodness, Alfre. I can see it. I can practically feel that mist. It sounds like a painting that moves.
That's precisely the intention. From there, the camera, with an almost imperceptible, glacial slowness, begins to pull back, revealing not just more of the estuary, but the distant, hazy outline of a small, isolated Gula community nestled against the ancient coastline. A place forgotten by the highway, remembered only by the wind and the whispering oaks. And then, we meet her. Ananias Nia Green. Nia is the heart of this story, Margo. And I wrote her, unashamedly, for myself. For this, Alfre, not the formidable, wise counsel, not the steadfast mother figure, not the pivotal supporting character whose insights guide the protagonist's journey. No, Nia is the journey. She is the protagonist around whom the entire universe of this film revolves.
Nodding slowly, a thoughtful hum. I understand completely, Alfre. The ones they don't quite let you carry, even when you're more than capable.
Exactly. Nia is not an outwardly extraordinary woman, not at first glance. She runs the tiny post office in this remote coastal community. A quiet, unassuming figure, often overlooked, seen as merely part of the background hum of the town. She wears simple cotton dresses, her hair is usually pulled back in a neat bun, and her hands are skilled at sorting mail, at tending a small, riotous garden of herbs and wildflowers that spills over her porch. But beneath that quiet exterior, beneath the surface of the mundane, Nia carries an inheritance, a legacy that runs deeper than the deepest roots of the cypress trees. She is, in essence, a living archive. She doesn't just know the history of her people, of that land. She feels it, the triumphs, the heartbreaks, the untold stories, the very memories of the soil and the saltwater, they resonate within her. Not as abstract facts, but as a palpable, visceral experience. She can feel the echoes of slave ships in the wind, the resilience of her ancestors in the stubborn scrub brush, the joy of a forgotten festival in the way the sunlight dances on the marsh grass. This isn't a magical ability in the conventional sense, Margo. There are no special effects, no glowing eyes. It's a profound, almost spiritual attunement, a quiet knowing that has been passed down through generations of women in her family. A sensitivity to the frequencies of the past that others have lost the capacity to hear. She experiences the world multidimensionally, seeing not just what is, but what was, and what, by extension, must inevitably be.
Leaning forward, captivated. Oh, Alfre, that's truly something. It's not just wisdom, it's a different kind of perception.
It is. It's the deep wisdom that comes from embodying history. The conflict ignites when a ruthless corporation, intent on building a massive resort complex, descends upon their community. They offer tantalizing sums of money, dangle promises of jobs and progress, and slowly begin to erode the community's resolve, exploiting the younger generation's desire for modern conveniences and the elders' weariness. Nia, initially, is just another voice of quiet dissent, her warnings dismissed as old-fashioned sentimentality. But as the developers press harder, as ancient burial grounds are threatened, as the very ecology of the estuary, which is the lifeblood of their culture, comes under assault, Nia's unique attunement becomes more urgent, more insistent. The land itself begins to speak to her in ways it never has before, not in gentle whispers, but in insistent pleas. She starts to experience vivid, almost unbearable sensory memories. The taste of salt on a parched tongue during an escape, the sound of ancient spirituals sung under a full moon, the feel of ancestral hands shaping pottery from local clay. These aren't just visions. They are a call to action, a profound sense of responsibility to protect not just property, but the very soul of her people. The story then unfolds as Nia, despite her inherent shyness and aversion to the spotlight, is forced to step into an undeniable leadership role. But it's not with rousing speeches or dramatic confrontations. It's through her quiet, unwavering conviction, her deep understanding of the land's spiritual and historical significance, and her ability to articulate the unspoken truths that bind them. She guides her community not through force of will, but through the profound clarity of her insight, through the gentle but unyielding authority of someone who literally carries the past in her bones.
A small, knowing smile. Oh, they wouldn't know what to do with that, would they? A quiet strength like that, they'd want to fight, a big courtroom scene.
Precisely. They'd want a David versus Goliath story, but the stillness between the tides is something more intimate, more profound. It's about how the deepest power often resides not in outward display, but in the steadfastness of spirit, in the unshakable connection to one's roots. Naya doesn't win by defeating the corporation in a conventional sense. She wins by solidifying her community's identity, by helping them remember who they are, by re-establishing the sacred bond between people and place. She empowers them to see their own history, their own land, their own quiet dignity, not as something to be sold, but as something inviolable. The climax isn't a physical battle. It's a spiritual awakening, a collective reclamation of memory and self. And through it all, Nia, this unassuming postmistress, becomes the living embodiment of that enduring legacy. She becomes the voice of the tides, the keeper of the echoes.
Quietly. And she's absolutely centered, the undisputed axis. Everything moves because of her.
Exactly, Margo. She is the sun in that particular solar system. Every character, every conflict, every moment of beauty or despair radiates from her perception, her resilience, her profound sense of belonging and responsibility. It would be an ensemble piece in its rich tapestry of characters, yes, but Nia's internal journey, her quiet strength, her gradual, almost reluctant embrace of her inherited role, is the beating heart of it all. It's a film about the power of memory, the sacredness of land, and the quiet, unyielding resistance of a people who refuse to be erased. It's about the kind of strength that doesn't roar, but simply is.
Sighs, a touch of wistfulness in her voice. It sounds magnificent, Alfre. Truly. But I can hear them already, the executives. Where's the hook? Is there a love interest? Does she develop superpowers? What's the market for a deeply reflective, spiritually attuned narrative about a quiet black woman saving her ancestral land from developers through sheer will and historical resonance? They'd want you to be a lawyer, or a revolutionary with a gun, or a healer with magical potions. Something they can package.
A soft, knowing laugh tinged with a familiar weariness. Oh, Margo, you know them too well. That's precisely the conversation. They hear quiet, and they translate it to lack of dramatic tension. They hear spiritual attunement, and they think niche. They see a black woman at the absolute center of such a story, driving the narrative with such profound internal agency, and they struggle to place it. They love the idea of a formidable Alfre Woodard, but always in relation to someone else's journey, someone else's crisis. My quiet power, my gravitas. It's celebrated, yes, but always in a supporting, often advisory capacity. They struggle with the notion of it being the undisputed engine of a major film. They want the big swing, but not this kind of big swing. Not this particular kind of quiet, deeply rooted, profoundly Black American epic.
No, they don't. They're not ready. Not for something that nuanced, that real.
A warm, sad smile in her voice. Not yet, darling. Not yet. But the story, like the tides, keeps turning,